So in here, we will clean up our URL. So for you to see what I mean here, I will copy the current URL and paste it in here. So nothing wrong with this URL. The only thing is we have this .php, this section right there. This is not very good looking. So for example, if I had more things to add here, I would go like id is equal to the way it is there, and then I'll put an and there, maybe say page is equal to 1, and then we'll put and type is equal to. So you can put in this URL, you can put as many parameters as you want in there. It doesn't really matter. But we could change this URL to something much simpler. So normally the URL will be something like this: http, and then it will be www dot your, let's say, mybook.com, something like that. Okay, so this is normally what it would look like if it were online. So this is still not a pretty URL. What I would want us to change this to is if we can remove all this and just put something like that, and then we say that, and then we go to that, something like this. See, now even better, instead of that, we can add a name there like so, so that we know this is this one's profile, this is the name. So just by looking at the URL, you can tell that this is somebody's profile, and then this is probably their name in that profile, and you can ignore the other parameters here, but still you can agree that this is much cleaner than this. Okay, so this is what I mean by cleaning up our URLs. We're going to convert that into that. Now, to do this, we need to do a few tricks here and there. So the first thing we have to do is create a new file. So let's go back to our folder. So this is inside my book. So in here we have all these files, and this is our main page where the index page is. So in here we want to put an htaccess file. So what I shall do is, let me just go back here and probably drag the my book folder to here, so I can do things from right there. So inside the main folder, my book right there, I will say new file. Then I will paste some code from my notepad here. So this is the htaccess code that I use in all the tutorials here. So I'm sure if you've gone through those, you're familiar with it by now. So all this is saying is that the rewrite engine should be on. That is the Apache. That's your server now. This is not PHP. We are using this to edit the behavior of our server, which is Apache. So that's what htaccess files do. So we'll say rewrite engine on, and then ignore files and folders. And then here, this is a rewrite condition here for files and rewrite condition for folders. And this is the rewrite rule here. So we are using a regular expression here to tell it that everything that is in the query string, pick everything, and then redirect to the index page and set it to this get variable called URL. So instead of us having to use our own get variables like these ones, like the way we are saying id is equal to this, and then we pick those up, what we're doing is redirecting all of them to the URL is equal to the first item. So that's what this means. So just copy this and save it. So we'll save this as inside here .htaccess. So no file name, is just .htaccess, and save. Pretty good. Now once you do this, everything is now broken, because Oh, actually it's not broken, it will still work. So as you can see, if I refresh and put in that URL as it is, it will still work just fine, no problems. But let's see if we go to the about page now. Okay, into the following page. Okay, so things are still working as intended. But let's try and see if we remove the index.php there. Okay, so even after we remove the index.php, we still go to the home page here. That's because I've told it to redirect everything to the home page. So if I go here and say profile, let me remove the PHP at the end. So I have said profile there, but I'm being taken to the index page. And that's because I've told it to redirect everything to the index page, except when an actual file is specified. So this is where this rewrite condition is working, this one right there. So if it's an actual file, just open it as it is, or an actual directory, opening it as it is, but otherwise send everything to the index page. Okay, so that's what it's doing. So everything is still working fine. It's only that now we can use cleaner URLs. So now that we've done that first step, we can move on to recreating our URLs. So first of all, let's begin with the profile page itself. So to start with, we need a page that will reroute everything. Now, since we already have a website that's working here, I don't want anything to stop working, because normally what we would do is in the index page we'll create the redirector, something to redirect to the page that we actually want. But instead of doing that on the index page, because we already have a functioning index page here, I would much rather we create a new page. Okay, so leave this on and let's go to my book, new file, and let's save this file as the router.php, like so, router.php, and save. And then let's go back to our htaccess file and let's change this to router.php. Now the reason I've done this is because I want to put some code in the router which is not any of these it looks nothing like any of this index page and stuff. Okay, but I don't want to disrupt the index page, so just keep in mind that normally what I'm putting in router is the one that should go into the index page on a normal website if we had started this way. But I'm doing it this way because we already have a functioning index page and I just want to include it in the router. Okay, so there we go. Now let's see if we've broken anything. So let me refresh here. Nothing has been broken, but if we type some gibberish in there, something it doesn't understand, it will take us to the router page, right? So this is where we are at the router page in here. So let me just say we are in the router page. Let me save that so that you can confirm this. So there we go, we are in the router page. If I come back here, this is my book. I can still go to other people's profiles, see posts and stuff. Okay, so everything is working as intended. Now we want it differently crafted, for example the profile page. So I want to go to my profile by typing profile at the top there, not put.php, just profile itself, and hit enter. Now because this is not a real file and it's not a real directory, we are rerouted to the router page. So now the router page should decide what to load depending on what's inside our browser, our link. So let's try something here. So let me go to PHP tags here, add some PHP tags. I don't need to add closing tags because I won't be putting any HTML in here. So what I will do is I just want to see what's inside the URL get variable. Now the reason I'm checking in there is because in our htaccess file we told it to save to that particular memory location inside the get. So let me close this other file that we don't need anymore. So back to router, So let's see what's inside the router. So at this case, we have profile. That's what we have. But I could put something like I want an ID of the user. So let's go back to an actual existing wait a minute. I want an ID, an actual ID. So copy that. So maybe I shouldn't have closed that temp file after all. So I want to hold this value there. So what I want is, you see here, I will that's actually my profile. No worries. So what I want to do is put profile on its own like that. So I'm taken to there, and then I'll put a slash and the ID there like so. So it still doesn't recognize what this means, but at least it's giving me this out here. And I can do some interesting stuff with this because I know that this is one value and that is another value because they're separated by this. So all I need to do is separate these two, and then I can use them to retrieve my profile. So here, all I need to do now inside the router is I could create a function here. So I could, or let me create a function here. So let's create a function that will perform these actions for us. So functions, what do we call this one? Maybe split URL, something like that. Split URL. So in here I will give, I don't actually need to give it because it's a global variable anyway, so it will be available inside the function. So what I want to do is set URL is equal to, now sometimes there won't be anything in the URL, so we need to set a default value. So I'm going to use the if statement here, say if URL is empty, if the get is empty, this is get like so, URL. So I'm just going to say if is set. You can use is set, or you can use if array key exists, something like that, because this is an array after all. So if is set, then let's put a question mark because this is an if statement. So if this is set, we're going to set this equal to that. So let's put this one right here. And then we're going to say full colon there. If it is not set, let's where do we send this? Let's add home instead as the default value, like so. Okay. So if nothing is set in there, we set URL equal to home, or we set it equal to whatever is inside there. Okay, so well and good. But then now let us split it again. So I'm going to say URL is equal to, right there, URL is equal to explode. That's the one I was looking for. So let's explode using that slash there. And then what are we exploding? The URL. So we're turning this string into an array with items that are there, but I also want to trim this. Let's trim it just to make sure that in case there's an extra slash at the end, we don't get, since we are using this to split. So let's trim, put a comma and tell it to trim any slashes at the beginning or at the end of the string before we can do this. So that should work. And then on top of that, let's filter this array, the resulting string here. So we can do that. Oh, actually we can't do that after this, because this now becomes a what you say, an array. Yeah. So let's just filter the variable. So we'll use filter var like so, to make sure that we sanitize any strange, we remove things that are not supposed to be in the URL. So close there, because that's an opening bracket. So this bracket, we are filtering this data, and then let me put a comma here and tell it how to filter. So we're going to say filter, I forget what this one is, so it's URL, is it? Filter URL. I feel like I'm forgetting. I think there's yeah, sanitize here, sanitize, something like there we go. So filter sanitize URL. These are flags. So to understand what this filter var does, just find it on php.net and put that there. It will explain what that does. But essentially, it's just cleaning up removing any unwanted characters from there. So once we do this, we've split our URL, and I can just say return URL. So we're returning an array here of the URL. So since I have the function here, I can come here and put a very big, put that in capital letters like that, so that I know this one is the resulting one, and I will say split URL like that. So this is the function, and then we are running it here. Now I want to see what is inside URL at this point. Okay, so let's come back here and let me refresh. And so you see it's an array with this item at first, that's profile, and that's ID. So now from this I can see that the first item is always the page name, and then the second item is whatever parameters I need to access my page. So for example, let's just get the first item and assume that's a page, right? So what I will do here, I will say, since there will always be that first item, the reason there will always be that first item is because even if there's nothing in there, we are still assigning a default value of home. Okay, but I think instead of home, since we already have an index page, let's change this to index as the default. That would be much better, so that we don't break the other URL types, right? We have to try and maintain what's already there. That's a better way to go forward, because the reason I'm doing it like this is you might want to change the URL types in a website that already exists, but then since it's been running for a while, people already have links to that website. So I don't want you to break the old links. This way we are upgrading without destroying what was already there. So the old links will still work fine, but then we can create cleaner ones which we'll be sharing from now on to people. Okay, so at this point here I will say require. So I want to require a page. Yes. So let's require whatever is pages in the URL 0. So URL 0. And at this point I will say, let's concatenate a.php at the end, like so. But it's always a good idea to find the page first. So if file exists, right? So we are checking file exists, that one, and .php, of course. If that file exists, then load it. But if it doesn't, so put an else statement. If it doesn't exist, then let's put in something like a 404 page, right? So here we'll say page 404, right? So you will have to create this page not found here so that people can see that instead when they don't find the page they're looking for. So this is supposed to lead us to the profile page. So moment of truth, let me refresh. And as you can see, we are on the index page, and isn't that lovely? But the problem is, as you can see, we are not seeing any images here. So this is the problem. Everything else seems to be loading fine because we are getting our posts, we are getting the name, the correct name of the user and everything, but the images are missing, and there's a fundamental reason why. And that's because if you look at the link here, let's go back to this one. The link has changed to something with a slash here, for example. Okay, now normally the images, when they're referencing themselves, they'll think this is a folder. So the images will start referencing from this point here, they'll think these are folders and they'll reference from there because we are giving them relative links to these images. If I inspect the element here, you will see that the image, the source starts with uploads. It doesn't start with HTTP, it just starts upload. So this is a relative path. So it's taking a relative approach to this and assuming this is a folder. So all we need to do to fix this is to give these images absolute paths. So you will see what I'm talking about. If I remove the very last part here, it will load nicely. And there we go. So as long as I don't put any slashes there, it will not assume there are more folders here and it will load correctly. So as you can see now, the URL is much cleaner at the top there. It's just profile. There's not even a .php at the end and it's loading just fine. But if the page is not found, it will look for 404, which does not exist. So let's create one real quick. Let me go back here and inside my book, I will create a new file, save this as 404.php, save and say let's just say page not found. So you can design it as required. So if I refresh now, we'll say page not found. Okay, so this is the beginning to cleaning our URL. So when we come back, we'll fix whatever issues have arisen from that. I'll see you in the next video.